4:43.
Nice.
What is up, everyone? How's it going? This is the Tesla Beat podcast, and we have all of our regulars. I think some of us have been doing traveling, so really nice to have the full squad back. We have Joe, Jeff, and Alexandra. How's everyone doing?
I'm good. Thank you for
Good.
asking.
Good morning.
How are you, Alexandra?
I'm fine.
Oh,
Back
I
from
think you're
Vegas
muted.
and Orlando. Where in Orlando? I'm not. I think we have a problem again. Do you hear me again?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
it's just delayed, but all
Can you hear
good.
me now? I think I had an issue. I think I had an issue.
Yeah, I think we can hear you now, but yeah, well, welcome back from Vegas and Orlando. I'm glad it was a good trip. But yeah, let's jump into it. So Tesla is still pretty much roughly where it was at last week, down 22%. Not that this matters, but it was Sawyer just posted a tweet. Man, NVIDIA is on a tear. We're not discussing NVIDIA, but they just passed $2 trillion. So pretty crazy. But yeah, let's just jump into some of the Tesla news. So I thought that I would just spend a couple of minutes just talking about my trip to Vegas, because I think this really level sets what I think people don't realize about the Cybertruck, and really I think the importance of this product as a brand and potentially as a truck to Tesla, and really potentially what the future will mean. So I personally have never felt like a celebrity wherever I've gone. I mean, sure, you go to the Tesla events, you know a lot of people know you, but it's a pretty niche kind of community. But being in the Bay Area, the Cybertrucks, like, people see them probably several times a week. It's no longer, it's kind of like seeing, I'll be honest. I mean, Rivians are more normal than that, but it was kind of like seeing a Rivian almost, or it's somewhat normal now. And we're kind of used to it. So it's not like it used to be, like even 2 or 3 months ago.
We have
but
zero
when I
here,
went to-
by the way, in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah, and honestly, Vegas is the same. Vegas is absolutely the same. They have one showroom model in all of Las Vegas. And also too, and Alexandra, you were there as well, but the amount of international people walking through there it is just like, it's people from all over the world. And so it's probably one of the most international places you can go to, maybe outside of the Silicon Valley. But just as far as, like, if you're going to a hotel, you're just the people flowing through are from all over the world. And I don't think I've ever felt, this much attention in one thing ever. And I don't know, obviously this hype is going to be there probably for the next couple months, depending on where you go. But we did a couple of things where I went to the Bellagio, and I paid the valet like $50. I was just like, just leave this here. I have GoPros going just to get reactions. I did several interviews. I even was at the Trump International and just had some GoPros going to get reactions. And at one point, there was probably like 30 people at the Bellagio just standing around it, just taking video. And wherever we went, whether it was drive-thrus, I got a lot of reaction videos from doing drive-through reactions. Even just driving on the road, people, like, even during this trip, like, I don't think I've ever seen so many people just looking over, what is that? And I would say probably 4 out of 5 of the people knew what it was, but there was that one person was like, what is this? Just what company makes this? Because there's no branding on it at all. But I don't think I've ever noticed anyone or any product just turn so much attention, right? Like, even if, like, for example, and this is me, I'm not a big celebrity person, but if I saw, if Kim Kardashian was over there, I'm not going to go over there and take a video. But this product, because, and again, maybe it's a person versus a product, everyone pretty much came over, at least walked by it, pulled out their camera, and they made sure to just get around, a shot around it. People weren't even asking. Of course, they were touching the car. They were just standing on front of it, putting their hand on it. But I don't think I've ever felt so much And to be honest, there was times where the attention just felt really uncomfortable. It was cool to like get the reaction, especially when I was able to like step away, just have the GoPros going. But it was just it was like just a really special trip. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but it really just set the tone for what this product means for the future of cars. It really is so different than anything you'll see, right? It is, and we all know this, but to be able to drive in this and see that, even there was parts of rural California that I was in, whether it was Bakersfield, and I think what was some of the other stops, Colinga, it just stops that I was doing, and people, I can't tell you how many people they stopped. Like a Tacoma pulled up. I had like several other trucks. They pulled up, and they're like, "What is that?" Or "This is the first time I'm ever seeing that. Like, what do you think of it?" And so, yeah, just the amount of attention that this truck got, I thought, really just, I think being able to live it, being able to experience it, really was validating for me on what this product really means for the industry. So,
I have a question for for everybody, mainly for Jeff. What do you think about this in the sense of the Cybertruck? If Tesla made it a limited production vehicle, like in 5 years, like they just stop making it, like they do a run of whatever they're going to make and whatever they're going to sell, and then they stop it. Is that a possibility, you think?
I mean, and maybe it really depend on product success and how it's doing. Anything's possible. You could end a life of product. Some people end a life of product, as soon as they launch it. So I think anything's possible, to be honest with you. But I don't see that happening here. It's a good question.
Yeah, reason why I ask it is because I was curious about the complexities of how it's made and the materials and things like that. And I look at the run rate of like the Model S, right? Like I just do not foresee the Cybertruck being sold 13 years from now. So I was just really trying to think like, well, would they stop it? How would they go about that? Like, what I mean? I just don't see it becoming like as ubiquitous as like a Model Y, but it could. But I was just really curious about that.
I think it will go a long way, especially here in America. I mean, we've seen the success it has now overseas in China, in Japan, in Korea. The Europeans are waiting for it. So I think it will go a long, long way.
We must have said something. Jeff pieced out, but yeah, I mean, anything's possible. I've been at companies where they have launched products, and then next thing you know, within months, they're end of lifing it already or doing massive price drops. I think this will TBD. Right now, this thing is so hot, and we're in a small community on X, so as much as it feels like everybody's getting one, it's probably really all of this the same friends and family that we've all known. Like, I just feel like everyone's posting, "Hey, I got a VIN. Hey, I got a VIN." And so it feels like production's moving really fast. But we'll see what happens. I think they need to get out of the foundation series, and I think they'll probably get indicators probably once they pass the foundation series. They need like a year to 18 months to get indicators of how many people are stepping up to the plate. And also too, pricing, like, is pricing going to go from the 80 to 100 that it's at to more like 70, 90 or 60, 80, which is totally possible. But also too, we know the amount of steel and equipment on this truck, to see it that cheap, it's possible. I mean, anything's possible with Tesla, but I don't think that they would end of life it that soon, but what do I know? And being an owner, hearing you say that so early, it I get chills. All right, so jumping into the next thing. I mean, this week, if you guys were paying attention, was big news on Rivian and Lucid, and what I really want to actually discuss is, Tesla gave their earnings about a week or two ago, or no, 3 weeks ago. Feels like, geez. And they didn't give guidance. And here other companies are giving guidance, and it's a third, it's half of what what the street was expecting. Maybe not quite that bad. But what are your thoughts? So again, analysts, for example, like for Lucid, they were expecting 22,000. Lucid guided to 9,000. You have Rivian expecting 80,000 from the street, but now it's 57,000. And then I do think that we'll get into some of Elon's comments on the next slide. But what are your thoughts on hearing what others are struggling with and where they're currently at?
I think like I'm just all in on EVs. So I think any EV sold is an ICE that isn't, which is core to the mission, right? So I see these things happening, and I'm pretty sure as a Rivian fan, just like how we are fans of Tesla, that they're experiencing the horror stories. But as we know, which Wall Street apparently never does, is it's a good vehicle, and they're selling, and they're people like them. You know what I mean? It's not like a Fisker Ocean. I don't know if anybody saw the MKBHD video, but so it's not like garbage, right? These cars aren't garbage. So I don't think they, I mean, I know they're going to enter their production hells and have these tumultuous times, but just like Tesla did for years. I mean, we got to remember, like, Tesla wasn't profitable until 2020, 2021. So like, and that was like from 2008 to, you know what I mean, for the first vehicle to then. So I mean, these are just going to be rough times for people, and they're going to have to get over it. The good thing about both of those companies, which Fisker kind of doesn't have, is that they are backed by deep pockets. You know what I mean? Like, I don't foresee the Saudi fund. They would lose face if they kind of let that fail. So I don't see that happening personally. And with Rivian and the people behind it, I just don't see them also failing in that regard. But I'm not hoping for them to fail either, because, like I said, I think any EV sold is an ICE that isn't, which is core to the mission. So
Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. I don't want either of them to fail. I have more love for Rivian than I have for Lucid, but I would like both of them to survive. Now, two comments on Lucid. Yes, the Saudis behind it have the pockets, but it only goes so far. Those of us who have followed what happened with Credit Suisse was for years in deficit, and people were speculating whether the Saudis, who were the main shareholder behind it and liquidity giver, would continue to do it. And then at one moment they pulled the trigger and didn't do it anymore. And that's what happened. So I wouldn't just say it's a fixed given that the Saudis will forever pay. There is only so much money you can put in there. And the second point I want to make on Lucid is Rawlinson's remuneration is just insane given their results, right? So when I hear people complaining about Elon and his compensation package, for which he had high barriers and matched them, and you see Rawlinson and the results go down, and he has a huge pay package, and he still gets a bonus on top of that. That's where I lose a little bit of a faith. But as you, I agree. I'm rooting for them. I rather have them on the streets than any ICE vehicle. But let's also face it. This just shows how difficult the task was. I mean, they are coming after years of Tesla making the hard work for EV, doing what needed to be done, being able now to plug into the North America charging standards. So Tesla helped them up the road, and yet they can't deliver. And Tesla continues to deliver, and no matter what happens, Tesla gets criticized for everything they have. So it's really sometimes disheartening at what point people give these two companies a break, even though, again, I'm rooting for them, but at what point they give them a break compared to the hard standards they're always putting towards Tesla. And the last point I want to make, because this morning I did quickly the analysis in the fund. So the only fund that had Rivian is Gary. Not wanting to hate on Gary, but his thesis 3 months ago was that Rivian would outperform Tesla in those 3 months. I mean, that didn't happen. And so Wall Street is, and I'm associating Gary with Wall Street here, but Wall Street is sometimes just getting it plain wrong as well, and we should acknowledge that when it happens as well.
Yeah, they missed on Amazon, they missed on
Yeah.
Apple, they missed on
Exactly, and they're missing on Tesla, and Tesla's time will come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I totally get that. I like the fact that you brought that up because it's interesting to see, like, I mean, like Lucid, 500 miles of range, what everybody wants, but yet they can't sell the vehicle. I mean, that's wild to me. And you got Rivian, which is RJ Scaringe. He speaks well. He's, I mean, he's like everything. He's a anti Elon in that regard, and still like the inefficiencies of the business, I think, is what's holding him back, trying to produce vehicles and trying to get to that production rate that puts you above is a problem. But I think their Model 3 moment is coming with the R2, and I mean, a couple of years I think they would be okay, but it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I have much less beef with RG than I have with Rawlinson. I mean, Rawlinson, we know how he deforms history and puts himself into a certain spotlight that he doesn't deserve. And then the other thing, and I just saw that comment, that was a really great comment from Beach Crow, $379 million that he's paid per year. 9,000 cars delivered. That is $42,000 a car, right? I mean, this is just crazy as a remuneration. It just is, but nobody seems to make a fuss about it, right? Exactly, John. That's it.
Yeah, I think I love what both of you said. I think not that as Tesla, people that cover Tesla, people that are fans of the company and what they're doing and who have been potentially like long time followers, we always compare ourselves to like, hey, these people get the special treatment. This is the Tesla treatment, which is essentially, you see the mud over there? Let's just take your face and run it through it and then jump on you and kick you.
True.
And
All
yeah,
day long, right?
yeah. And what you were talking about is this comment here. So shout out to Beach Crow. Rawlinson's 379 million divided by 9,000 cars delivered equals 42. He is personally getting half the MSRP when you buy your car from
Exactly.
Lucid. So
This is
and
ridiculous.
again, we're not here to just crap on Lucid per se, but it's a different mindset. And Elon during the 2018 days, and that's really, to be honest, when I came onto the scene as a Tesla owner, and as a shareholder, is when things clicked, it was during those production hell days, where here Elon gets some insane comp package that no one thought that they were going to have a 10x run within a year. No one thought that, right? And actually the exact opposite was happening, where this company was almost on the fringes of dying week in, week out, especially during those summer days. I remember I got my Model 3 on, I think it was like July 5th or something like that, or that summer. And those were the worst days of Tesla's. Well, they probably had multiple ones, but those were like hell production days. Elon's sleeping on the floor. But yeah, it's just a different mindset. It's a double standard. And, I do think Lucid is in an interesting spot because really like their crown, they have several crowns, like the range and some of the, luxury. But will people, I think they're more competing against like the BMWs and Mercedes. And you could say that is true of Tesla, but it's really that high end. The way the MSRPs are at the same, but there's just so much competition now, in my opinion.
John, 9,000 cars. They don't compete against anybody. I mean,
well, never mind. I guess what I was trying to say is like, I think why they're facing so many headwinds is, one, I feel like they're 10 years late. Two, in that high end market, when you're talking 80,000 plus on MSRP, there's only so many people in that box. And like you said, 9,000 is pretty much nothing. But that's why I don't think they're doing well. It's just because of that space. But it's neither here nor there. But yeah, so it's really interesting to see these companies, especially like again, Rivian guiding to 9,000 versus 22,000 expected, 57,000 versus 80,000 for Lucid. That and Tesla didn't give guidance, and so that's because, in my opinion, they're the bigger brother here. They know how they know what they need to guide to. Thankfully, Elon didn't speak out of term, and oh yeah, we can hit 4 million or what whatever this year. But yeah, it was just really interesting to see just the fallout happening with these companies, and this is like 3 or 4 weeks after Tesla has given their earnings, and of course Elon really gave his opinion. So here we have Elon just saying for Rivian specifically that in the next 6 quarters they are going to go bankrupt unless something drastically changes. And then he also commented on Lucid. Shout out to K10, but he said that we all know who their sugar daddy is, which is keeping them alive. But Alexandra, you said it best, right? Like the pool at some point may run out, and it will. You can't just keep funding something, especially if Rawlinson's getting like $42,000 a car. You can't scale when you're paying your CEO that insane amount of money. But yeah, I thought it was just really interesting to see, not necessarily the fallout, but again, 3 or 4 weeks ago, everyone is like, the roof is falling off for Tesla, right? Like the roof is just being burnt down. And here the other companies are, that I would say probably have mainly Lucid again is hopefully they survive. It's hard to believe that, but Rivian actually, like their R1S is a beautiful car. I love it, especially from a family perspective. And I think that Tesla's missing out on that market because that's such an amazing family vehicle. I'm seeing a bunch around my neighborhood because it's a great family car. It's going to replace potentially like Suburbans and Yukons, just because it can hold, 7 people, 8 people. But it's very spacious, and it's got a decent amount of range. But
what
yeah.
I was wondering, if you don't mind me asking you,
Yeah.
what would happen to these Lucid owners if really Lucid went bust? Where do they go for maintenance? What would happen to you if you just, because already their network now is small, right? But if suddenly the company wouldn't exist, as an owner of quite expensive EV, you got an issue, don't you?
Yeah, I think it would become like almost like the Roadster days, right? Like shout out to Gruber Motors, where you would probably have 1 or 2 shops in the nation. If it broke down, that they would be specialists on Lucid. Probably they wouldn't just focus on Lucid. But I think that's what would happen. I mean, I don't know how many cars
Yeah,
Lucid
you're right.
sold till now, but yeah, it would be horrible. Like even my Cybertruck right now, right? Like if I got in a car accident or if I broke the door, I don't know how long the production's going to take, because I know Tesla's
Yeah.
going to prioritize putting
Mhm.
a new door onto a production truck that they're going to get 100 to 120,000 for. They're not going to send it to
True,
Fremont.
but your Cybertruck is less fragile than the Lucid, believe me.
That's true. So, but yeah, it was interesting. But I think that's like, if you're thinking of that case, yeah, the company goes away. It's that same exact mentality. Who knows when your car is going to get fixed?
Yeah.
And at that point, the software stays stale forever.
Right.
That's the scary
I
thing.
mean, not much of a software anyway, but there you go.
Right.
But yeah, any thoughts on some of the comments that Elon said? We don't have to go too deep because I think we've heard a lot of this before. But
I mean, he obviously got some hate saying, "Oh, now he is crapping on other EVs." But I think both of his points were correct. Rivian and actually RG made a big mistake in that call when he was hesitating to acknowledge whether or not they'll be cash flow positive in Q4, right? That was, everybody felt it. Everybody, not sure he was very truthful there, that he believes what he's saying, and Elon just put it out there. So I mean, Rivian is going to have a couple of tough months getting over this. If the launch of the R2 is going to be as successful as they hope for, maybe this works. But if not, this is going to be financially really complicated.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens. But Alexandra, we thought we would put you on the spot, so we have your
Oh,
tweet here. I
there
don't
you
know if
go.
you, do you want to just walk us through these insights that you
Sure.
put
So,
together?
the message, the primary message I want to get out is there is only little short interest now in Tesla. So don't ever expect a short squeeze in the current environment. That's just not going to happen. So the biggest short seller was last year, Cesa Capital. You see them on the bottom right. They were very short in Q2 of 2023. You see these high red bars. Then in Q3, they already lowered it to a third of it. And that part was reduced even further in Q4. Why do I know that now? Because the 13F filings of these companies always has to be done by the 15th of the second month after the quarter. So it was the 15th of February that we had the Cesa numbers. And that was my main interest because they were the biggest short sellers. On the top of those graphs are Millennium Management. They're more or less another hedge fund. Their position is different. You see in the dark green on the top their stock position, which they drove down. They drove down a lot in the last 3 months of last year. The little dark green parts at the top chart. But at the same time, they have puts and calls. The puts are in red in that middle chart, and the calls are in green. So the net of all them makes them today the biggest short seller of Tesla. But it's still, very, very limited because the short interest at the moment, and that's the table on the left. I've put it over the last 7 months. Nasdaq reports these every 15 days, about twice a month. And you have to know there's also option trading outside of Nasdaq. So this is not the whole picture, but this is a good part of the picture. And the short interest is between 75 million shares to about 95 million. We're currently at 90 million. This is nothing. So my message here is don't expect a short squeeze. There is actually very few short interest in Teslas at the moment. This is not about shorts. This is about big money movements. People currently seeing other stock more interesting. Tesla's time coming when we have a new catalyst that's really producing. I actually expect in the very short time one catalyst being the proxy statement for this year's annual shareholder meeting, which I expect to be in May. So we should have in the next coming days that, and it may actually have the new compensation plan for Elon in there. And I think if that is the case, that may be something Wall Street gets their hands on. And I mean, obviously, FSD version 12 and whatever. So there are many other catalysts. My message here is don't get worried about short interest. It's very low. It really is. It's historically low. And even the big players are giving up. Look at Cesa Capital.
What would you say is driving that? Do you think it's because the stock price is down right now, and maybe the potentially it's a good time to buy because
Yeah,
it's pretty much, or
exactly.
what
I
would
think for a short, yeah, you're completely right. I think for a short seller, there's just not much potential. Tesla at 200, your risk is much more that it breaks up to the upside than to the downside. And if the downside comes, I mean, nobody expects it going back down to 100, right? And if you're a short seller, you're not doing this for 10% of the buck. You want to have a major movement. So I don't think people expect here something. I think this is a solid base for people who want to have long-term investments and want to get in at an attractive price. But as a short seller, you have the fear of the stock rising abruptly, which it always does for Tesla. I mean, look at the stock movements for Tesla. It's a little bit like Nvidia. It does a huge thing in 2-3 months, and then it can go flat again, right? Or it can even give down a little bit. So if you're worried about this one moment when it goes up, well, you're not going to go short because you may just run after your money then.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Joe, unless you were going to say something, one question I have is, so you've been posting this for 7 months. What is the trend that you've been seeing? Is it similar trends to when you originally started posting this, or just seeing like the short interest just really go down? And then also like historically over the past 1 or 2 years, obviously we know at one point this was the most shorted stock in US history. But what have you been seeing over the past year or two?
So the most shorted stock you have to put in relation to the volume out there, right? If you look at the 10 mega caps in America, which means in the world, you have you had Tesla as being the most shorted, but that didn't mean it was highly shorted. It was just the most among those 10, right? Because people weren't shorting Apple or Microsoft or any of these other ones. So while that could be true, it doesn't mean it was heavily shorted. There are two different notions of that. The big part where Tesla was really shorted heavily was up to 2019. That's where it was dangerous, and that's where really 30% of the outstanding shares were shortened. So that was a huge moment. Since then, it has flattened out, and the last 1.5 years, it's been flat at those levels, right? It can go a little bit up, a little bit down, but you have some singular players like Cesa. I mean, nobody hears about Cesa other than being the biggest short of Tesla, and even that is not a huge amount given the outstanding of Tesla shares. So since the stock has had all-time highs, the short interest actually went down. And yes, there were people playing last year the move, down to 100 when we had that. But they actually jumped on the train end of 2022. They jumped on the train too late and had hoped that in 2023 it would go lower, and it didn't. And so they faded out. So I'm currently just not at all expecting the short interest to rise, and nobody should hope for a short squeeze. That's my one message, because sometimes as soon as something happened, the stock goes up by $10, people come, oh, that would be a short squeeze. Where would it come from? There are just not enough players having short positions. So just don't worry for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that knowledge. I think that's helpful context, especially right now, where maybe if you're looking again, still continuing to think long term, maybe it's a place where you would want to potentially invest, especially given all of the signs that we're seeing. All right, Jeff. Sorry, Joe. I will kick it to you.
Where's Jeff? Hey. Okay. So this is about Tesla charging. So this is pretty incredible. Right now, as we know, Tesla got the majority of the funding from the government. For their supercharger network. But not only did they get a lot of that money, but they are way more efficient in their cost control of putting together the supercharger network. I mean, right now it's like, what did Jason Gatsky said? Tesla superchargers cost over 80% less than industry average, about 60% less than a nearest competitor. So, I mean, you can see right here on the sample total, it's crazy cheap to make the supercharger, which I think is why you're seeing a lot of these companies realize we're not going to make our supercharger. We're just going to adopt NACS and just go with Tesla. They're making it, they're doing it efficiently, it's cheaper, and there's no cost to them. I mean, that cost per port at $18,000 versus some of the highest competitors at $150,000 per port. That's insane. But I really wanted to highlight this because Tesla charging, and as we'll talk about a little probably next week or whatever, because we had a spaces about it. But with Tanucci, she is crushing it. She has so much knowledge, her background on charging infrastructure and everything. And I just foresee, I don't foresee her having any problems going forward. I actually foresee that what Tesla is doing and with NACS is just going to become the biggest infrastructure for EVs in North America. And I mean, this is potentially we already see how it is with everybody adopting the service, right? So there's just no downside to this for Tesla. There really isn't. They're making more money they make them cheaper than everybody else. They have way more than everybody else, and everybody's adopting the infrastructure. I mean, Tesla's just that's just something that's going to play out years from now. I think it's just great.
Yeah, it is like having all the gas stations, right? People don't realize if that, when we're getting there, this is like having it all. The second thing I found absolutely astonishing when driving back from Vegas, and you must have seen the same thing, John, that when you're now going to these chargers and you put in whichever you want, Yermo or Baker or whatever, it tells you how many other cars are going to that direction, how many cars will be, stalls will be available by the time you get there. So not only do you have at any instance the availability, but you also have this projection of how much, by the 1 hour you will be there, other cars will be there as well, because they have identified them on their system and how many stalls will be available. I mean, this is crazy. And then getting to Rebecca, we talked about this earlier, and I think this was mentioned in that space. I didn't assist to it, but I heard about it afterwards. Rebecca Tinucci comes from a company that she had with her father that was in wireless charging, right? And so that's where she came from in 2018 when she joined as head of charging for Tesla. And look what she did in the last 5 years. I mean, I think she's a superstar. I think we have lots of superstars, but I'm very fond of this woman. I still vividly remember her presentation at Investor Day. I mean, she was great. She was good orator. She explained what they're doing, and she delivers. She delivers constantly. For me, she is one of the really high potentials in Tesla.
Yeah, I think it's just truly incredible to see, what Tesla is accomplishing. I mean, Jeff's not here. He could have given us really just the breakdown of like the supply chain costs and like what this would mean. Like if he were to see a stat chart like that comparing, what the cost is, for pretty much any competitor at those prices, it would just show like how ahead Tesla is going to be. And I think it's going to become one of those things where, I mean, we're seeing hotels, they're starting to install them. I've already seen gas stations say, hey, this is Chevron, charging, but it's actually, potentially Tesla in the back or some other company. And I think it's going to become clear over time. These companies they're not going to want to spend 7x per unit just to say it's their own, unless they're truly trying to compete against Tesla. And one slide I just wanted to show was that, more EVs are coming to the charging network. And so as Tesla can scale easily with this is going to be potentially just bread and butter over time. This is going to be, this is just going to be money that's just going to continuously generate from years of taking losses on these products. Because they announced the charging network, in 2012, and we're 11 years out, and they've have 55,000 stalls across the world, and that number is growing by 600-700 stalls a day or something insane, right? And this is going to, in my opinion, this is going to be just a hidden gem for Tesla over time. It's just going to be potentially like free revenue for them, and it'll be interesting to see once they turn this on. How much the supercharging revenue will grow in the next year. Because in my opinion, it's still just a seamless experience. And not only is it seamless, they're just in some of the best locations. Whereas some of these other networks, it's just kind of scattered, like they'll pick certain locations that they think are high volume, which is fine, but it's not consistent. And so Tesla, will really be, again, just so far ahead.
Yeah, and it's actually part of it's just part of the big energy subject, right? If you look at deferred revenues in energy in the last earnings call, this is massive. We've only seen, I think it's about 15% of what is already accomplished, meaning, when they sell those megapacks, and obviously charging is part of that, they cannot account for all of the revenue straight away. They have to put them in installments into the financials, because the contracts with the clients are that they pay a certain deposit, and then when delivery happens, something else is paid, and then the final payment only comes when it is getting on the grid. So these projections, we have the numbers, but they're currently not doing anything for our bottom line. But if you look at them, because they're coming, I mean, they may be coming in 3 months or in 6 months or in 12 months, but they're coming. Energy and charging is going to be such a huge topic for Tesla. It really shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah, I think we've all said this, that one of the potential hidden gems for Tesla is going to be energy and batteries. We've been, solar, all that stuff. And actually, while we're on that, we might as well just hit this now. Here, let's just back up. I think it's this one. The Powerwall 3 is now live in the US, and I have 2 Powerwall 2s at 7.5 kilowatts. But now they literally one Powerwall now has 11.5 kilowatts. I mean, to drive that improvement, with just your next generation, and I've had mine maybe 2 years. So the fact that they're just innovating and making these batteries more efficient at such a quick clip. So now I think Elon said, or it was someone else that said, most families only need 1 battery now. So that actually in some ways kind of means less sales for them in some ways, if you look at the potentially. But with charging, with the energy and solar and the battery business, it's going to be, they are going to be the leader. And I think, in my opinion, it just comes down to, can they feed the volume? Can they obviously continue to educate on this? But the demand and the technology is all there, ready for them.
Yeah. Not only that, they're way more. The power output is greater with the Powerwall 3, and so you can actually power more of your house with the 1 Powerwall versus the 7.5 kilowatt.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy because I have two Powerwalls that gets me to 15 kilowatts, and this is going to be 1 at 11.5. So assuming potentially the cost is the same, which I would assume it is, you're talking going from 15 to like 20 to 23 kilowatts. That's almost, it's just it's crazy to think, like, just the efficiency there. Jumping into how the Europe share is growing, the demand share specifically for BEVs. Shout out to Sawyer and even Jeff, who is not here, but Sawyer put out a comment saying a total of 93,000 battery electric vehicles were sold in the EU in January. That is a 29% year-over-year increase. So, I mean, EU, they've always just been leading the way. So it's insane. And then Jeff shared the BEV share up in Europe in Jan Comp 2023, and Tesla share of BEV is up 45%. So, it's interesting, people continue to say that there's a demand issue, but here we are just seeing the complete opposite. So I don't know if you've any other metrics that you guys want to comment on specifically on even the narrative of the demand issues for BEVs has been, going on for the past like 6 months. So pretty insane to see that.
It is, and it is in China, and it is in the United States. I mean, it's crazy how it is always distorted in the press and in the mainstream media, but it is. And I mean, January is always a difficult month because you have some, especially in Europe, you have some government subsidies running out at the end of the year, so other ones starting in the next year. So January is always a difficult indicator, but this is so clearly above last year's January that it becomes relevant. So love this. Looking forward to the new China numbers because they were closed for their New Year celebrations. So I think this is gonna be interesting. And I also love it because there's so many people now going, oh, but you see inventories picking up. I mean, don't you love it how these Tesla queues always have sort of 5 subjects and they're running around in circles around them. So at the moment it's inventory graphs as well. We've obviously debunked those inventory graphs for a long time, but it's the same issue. You will have moments where inventory builds up just because you need it. You have so much demand. And I mean, the Model 3s in Europe come from China. So there is the boat arriving and delivering them. So there you have the inventory, and then it takes a couple of weeks to sell them out. It's just crazy. So please, people, just relax. Don't do micromanagement to the day because that doesn't work. I hope Tesla does it for us, and they do it well. And for the rest, just I think every light's on green for Tesla for the coming months.
Yeah, I mean, I think with companies now, even companies that are already all electric, it's their numbers of production numbers are going down, and Tesla has even based on the volume, they have a big opportunity now to really build their moat, make it even bigger. And so, and as I think that post said, Tesla's up 45%, in that region. So it's pretty crazy to see, where things will be in a couple months. All right, Joe, we will pass it to you.
So Tesla went ahead and this is from Rohan Patel. He talked about this. So it was a few weeks ago that Lars Morovi and most of the Tesla team, they did a safety based research day. And so what the goal of the meeting is to show not only how safe Teslas are, but for EVs in general, and what Tesla specifically is doing with their metrics of how they can determine not only front end or rear end crashes, but what are the issues and how they are battling those issues within crash safety awareness. And I think it was good for the government to realize, like, I mean, yeah, Tesla's 5-star ratings on everything, right? But you hear that and then you see all the FUD or whatever, and so you think maybe they're not safe. But for Tesla to do this for the government, that take that time and show them, like, no, this is what they're safe, this is why, this is how we're doing it. And they according to Lars and Rohan on X, like, I mean, they gave them like a full treatment of everything that they're doing, how vehicles are safe, what they're doing going forward, how they're just making improvements on all these metrics. And I think that's really cool to see. And I know a lot of people will probably say, well, why aren't they making like commercials? But the I mean, because that type of awareness and education goes a long way. Yeah. I mean, everybody knows, well, not everybody, but in our bubble they do, but the people outside of the bubble have no idea. So when you have information like this that even people inside the bubble can appreciate, then you should definitely spread that message. And I think by them trying to do this, or by them doing this, is them trying to signal that there needs to be more point of emphasis for safety in EVs, and just that awareness needs to be broadened and heightened for a lot of the government. I don't think they realize a lot of it. I think that, a lot of these people, just like with our friends and family, we see it all the time. They're just like, I think I'm just gonna, I think Toyotas last a long time. I think I'm gonna get another Camry. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
Well, Tesla's
You're right, but I think they're doing it in two steps. First one, which I appreciate a lot, we now see Lars and Rohan and Drew a lot on X, right? They're replying to tweets, they're engaging with us. Same actually happens on LinkedIn, so it's nice to see. And the second thing is they have recruited a whole team. I mean, we've seen early on what John showed at the Santa Monica charging station, where they filmed with all these different brands of cars and obviously the Cybertruck. So I do believe we are in the phase where they're preparing the best way of communicating. It's not Tesla's core knowledge, right? I mean, they know how to build the best cars and the best megapacks and the best Powerwall and the best whatever else, but making the best publicity is probably a learning curve for them, because that's not what, this team was trained to do. And so just give them a couple more weeks and months, and I think we're going to see a lot of good educational ads in 2024.
Yeah, I would say we're one thing I do want to get into potentially Cybertruck safety, but I think we all know we're potentially in these two periods of growth, and you're dealing with the biggest thing is, how do you continue to make more and more people aware of your electric vehicles? Because you've already gotten through, there's so many people that already know about your company, and so now it's really going to be about, how do you continue to make more and more people aware that have no idea, that still think EVs excuse me, catch on fire, or you can't charge them in the rain, or just think it's a political scheme to just help climate change. And that's really the hurdle. Those are the masses. I can't tell you how many, and I think, Alexandra, you and I went back and forth on X about it. I've started to just, because I think it actually, well, it helps drive more views, but it also helps with education. So a couple of things, I've been doing too is partially leaning into a little bit of that clickbait where it's like, oh no, my charging is I'm not gonna be able to charge my vehicle. But then I try to end the videos with just education. But even then, on those videos, people will post certain comments, and I've been replying to them, just like Cybertruck's gonna rust, for example, or people will just say, oh, and now wait 2 hours, and they don't think about, if you're a homeowner, which again, I can't say, like, I don't know how many out of all Americans, like how many are own or renting or living in a home versus apartments. And because that's really, if you're living in an apartment, it's a different story. But if you live at your house, you don't have to think about it. You just plug it in and you go to bed and you wake up, you have a full charge. And, people keep saying, I've even said, oh, the average American charges 40 miles a day. And they're like, well, I'm part of the non-group that's 15 miles. But all I'm trying to say is that there's still so much education. And I can't tell you, like, I had one video of me charging my Cybertruck and it got 400,000 views on TikTok. And it's because of a couple of dumb comments that just drove up the views. But it just tells you how much people really still need to be educated. They can't be clicking on all of this clickbait, because now that's all the comments. Like my Cybertruck videos on Instagram, for some reason, I could post a picture of my tire and it's going to get 10,000 views. And it's just because everyone thinks this thing's going to rust now. Like I had a valet driver ask me that question. He literally was like, does this thing rust? I was like, dude, when has this mainstream media ever been right about this? So I think that Tesla has a huge hurdle. I mean, that's all what we're here to do, is help educate people too. But I think now we're past there was early adopters potentially like ourselves. Then there's like that next wave, which I think we've kind of gone through, which is like that next tranche. But I think like, the next hill to climb is probably going to be the hardest one. And I know that there's no other company to tackle this or innovate and figure out. I mean, we're seeing it, right? We're seeing Rohan, Lars, all of their executives are responding to fake news and FUD and being proactive about stuff. And so we're already seeing that happen. So it'll be interesting to see.
But you see, price is a main issue for these people. I mean, they will educate once they see an attractive car in their price range. And I think the next generation car with the $25,000 model and others, because I think the van and everything will all come at the same time, will fill this gap. Because I mean, I love my X, but not everybody can buy an X, and some people have 4 or 5 kids, and may want to have the 7-seater or the Y, but that may still have whatever. The other thing is that people don't buy cars, every year. There are cycles in car buying because their lease expires or whatever, or their financing expires, or their car breaks down. So you may actually convince people, but they're not immediately ready to purchase. So time, time is very complicated for car buyers. Also, there are studies about a usual car buyer, once the need is identified that now he has to get a new car, takes his decision in less than a week. So if you're doing education and advertising and whatever, you have to grab him in that week, and you have to make sure that he then understands he can order a Tesla and the Tesla is available and it's his price and whatever. All that will come much better into play once we have that $25,000 car. I actually sometimes spend my sleepless nights thinking of, what it must be for Tesla's management to now decide where to put the most resources. Should it be in accelerating the car development? Should it be in expanding the energy business, meaning opening more mega factories? Or should it be all in on the bot with, whatever? I think they're actually doing all of it, right? But it's also a question of allocation of resources. And I don't find answers for it. I just try to follow the breadcrumbs, and at the moment they don't lead me anywhere. But it is incredible how this company has opportunities. And if they go all in on all of those, I mean, the future is bright.
Yeah, I think the $25,000 cars is one aspect of it, but you got to remember that the Chevy Bolt was around that price and nobody bought it. So I don't know. I think people
I had
just want
one. It's crap. It's a crap car. I had one for 3 years.
So I think people just want a cheap Tesla. I don't think they really want a, inexpensive Tesla. I don't think because there are less expensive electric vehicles out there that people could buy and with decent range, you know what I mean? But people still aren't buying them. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. It's education. It's, people like, like if, Kia and Hyundai, they all have like potentially more affordable ones, but I see them, but I'm also in a pretty, I would say, progressive, forward thinking area. And so you'll see just more of those here. And so I still think that there is mass education that needs to happen for like the everyday American that lives outside of these potentially big urban areas that are, already buying electric vehicles. But yeah, and then one last comment I wanted to make about the Cybertruck. I was talking to a guy named Paul who runs the Las Vegas chapter in Tesla Owners Group, and he was actually saying that Cybertruck, like once they do the testing on this truck, it's probably going to become the safest vehicle that has ever been made. And then he was just talking about like, look at the ranking. It's like you have Cybertruck, and then you have the rest of the sexy lineup just right after that. And, Tesla, shout out to their team and their engineering and how they're building these vehicles with safety in mind. And so you can pretty much get in a Tesla and realize that this is going to be the safest thing that you will ever drive. And you can feel safe. And I have loved ones in my car, taking precious items wherever I go, and I got to make sure that they're safe. And this is not something that's talked about, right? So I think it'll be interesting to see how that all works in the coming months. Once they start doing the Cybertruck testing. So one interesting thing is we're seeing more expansion happening in South America. So I think it was, what was it? The other country, was it Brazil or Peru or no? It's Chile. They launched in Chile, and then now Colombia. So I think the one thing we all forget is Tesla is just still has not even expanded to some of these regions like Africa, or even the majority of South Africa. South America. So it'll be, it's exciting to see that they're starting to ramp in South America, and I could not be more excited to see the new countries and how they even build out the charging network, especially because I know some of those areas, especially getting across South America, can get pretty rural. And I've seen a person, shout out to Martin, who took his car from Alaska all the way down to the bottom of South America. It took him, I think, 5 months, but it's just because there's no charging infrastructure. But he showed that, hey, you can pretty much take your EV anywhere. You got a wall charger. You can, it'll take a day to charge, but hey, you can do it. So really cool to see that expansion. Any thoughts on South America or the expansion in general?
It will actually accelerate once Mexico is up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, especially too. I mean, again, I don't know, Alexandra, if you have any thought, but like, do we know the type of trade agreements that Mexico has with South America? I think it should make it pretty easy for them to get in there, right?
It does, exactly. Very, very favorable. That's one of the reasons a lot of people want to invest in Mexico, because Mexico has very favorable trade agreements with Central and South America.
Yeah. So one other thing that we saw was the new Tesla Model 3 is the car of the year for EVs under $100,000. I thought that to be able to get that award already, but have any of you driven the new refresh Model 3 yet? Yeah, it's Alexandra, go book a demo ride like yesterday.
Yeah, no, it's seriously like a mini Model S. The suspension, everything, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the hard part right now is just getting people aware that they have this new EV out, this whole new refresh, but the car is completely different. It is, you get into it, it feels solid, pretty much the full build. And the old Model 3 was built well, but you don't hear any sound outside of it. It's got obviously the new blind spot indicators. It's got the new fascia. super efficient battery as well. They obviously moved the windshield wiper. The interior, it's got the back screen for the kids and the second row screen. So there's a lot of upgrades. So it's cool to see that they're starting to hit these milestones. And I think to potentially just close us out, I think we could potentially end with this. Elon Musk, Nobel Peace Prize. He was nominated for it. So again, it'll be interesting to see if this comes through. But again, I can't tell you how many times I was on the road this week in my Cybertruck. I did about a 1,200-mile road trip in my Cybertruck in the past week. And people stopped me and they all said what they thought of Elon and what he's doing. And I think we forget that the loudest people, it's not the majority necessarily. And so what people are saying about what Elon's doing and he's accomplishing, they were all very excited. Like I can't tell you, I had at least at the supercharger 4 people tell me that. They're all excited about what he's doing with X, what he's doing with Tesla and SpaceX, and there's just they all know that the hate and the way that the media is portraying him right now is just to really continue to just punch him down as much as they can. So this year's not going to be an easy one for him. I know there's just going to be a lot more of mainstream media continuing to just bash him, but yeah, we'll see. So
I agree with you. I agree with you, John. Just one quick comment. While I think he deserves it threefold compared to anybody else up there, the committee for the Nobel Prize is the wokest people you can imagine. So the chances are close to zero, but that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve it. And the fact that he's nominated will at least bring the discussion up again, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Especially based on what he's done. If you just look at for climate change, especially if you take Europe, for example, what he's done to help accelerate electric vehicles in Europe alone, let alone the world. And then number 2 is, what he's doing with space exploration and really internet mobility and bringing internet to the world. And it's not just him. Okay. There's tens of thousands of people. But him going through and pretty much sacrificing all of his money that he made from PayPal into these companies. And he was, for the most part, the major investor in both those companies. And so just to see where they are now, I mean, SpaceX is what they're doing for people in rural areas. Like there's not going to potentially be a spot on the planet or even in the US where if there's an emergency that happens, you're in Joshua Tree or you're in some other part of the Mojave Desert or, in Utah, maybe on the, in the rural areas, you'll be able to get reception because of the work that he's doing. And in places like Africa, South America, where there's no internet access, and even other countries, again, I was just listing off continents really, but just there's no, people need access to knowledge, and that's really what is going to, help them get educated and get knowledge and learn. And so I'm really excited for what he's doing, and it'll be interesting to see how things shake out. But yeah, he may not get it, even though he may deserve it. But so either way, thank you all. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, Joe. Jeff had to step out, but please make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel. We'll be back next week. And also to give everyone a follow, patronize them. They spend an hour of their week with us. And shout out to Joe for helping with the presentation this week, especially I was in Vegas. But yeah, have a great week, everyone.
Bye.